going into it. Oh yeah. Let's go. All right. So we had a lot of Sean and Adrian and I and the team spent some time talking about what might happen if we go to this powwow and we're rejected, or we were told to leave or told to turn our cameras off. We imagined any number of situations that could happen to us. And we knew, as San Manuel is not one of those tribes that people challenge in any particular way. They give Lamborghinis away. That's kind of their thing monthly. I mean, they're one of the richest tribes in the world. And, so we knew going into it, we were saying something controversial, but we also wanted to be respectful of our tribal people. And we knew that we just kind of hoped that they would have a sense of understanding of what we were trying to tell. The story we were telling wasn't about what was wrong with them or what was wrong with any one of the committee members. It was just really, we wanted to show a story of resilience. So I think, we kind of just pulled our socks up and said, all right, here we go. We're going to go in here. Let's see what happens. And I was fully ready to get kicked out. I was ready to be arrested. I was happy to take that on as I was like, okay, here's what we do if I go to jail, bail me out. We did all of that because I just felt like you just don't know. You don't know how volatile situations are. I had just come off of 6 months at Standing Rock, and I was ready. I just thought, it's time to start telling the stories of the youth and start telling the stories of contemporary Native societies and really tip our hat to the 21st century American Indian and stop living in the past. So I think, we took all of that in our heart when we walked out on the stage and on the floor. And what really happened was remarkable is they welcomed us, and the Cruz Chacon family wanted them to be there. They were welcoming. So it was just kind of, we knew we were ready for the worst and were greeted with something very special, and that there was a readjustment, and that there was people took it to heart. They didn't want to see these boys feeling this way. They wanted to support the community. And so in that way, it went really well. And I think it was the best possible outcome for everyone, that they realized that it was a pretty upsetting thing for them to go through. And as you can see, they corrected it and allowed them not only to participate, but the jurors gave them an award. And so it's the ultimate story of acceptance and success. And it gives me a lot of hope for the future for a lot of our issues in this world, that we can be wrong and still be redeemed in the end.
Thank you. Michael?
Yeah, thank you so much for the film. It was really amazing. You already touched on this a little bit, but I was curious if you had any insight maybe afterwards of whether it was primarily maybe community pressure after the first time they got denied that kind of led them to change their minds, or if they just had a change of heart or a change in leadership, or kind of what made that happen. Because it obviously, like you said, at the time when you're living it, it's surprising, and oh look, they actually did come around. But I was curious if you found out later what it is that led them to do that.
We don't have confirmation in any particular story thread of why things happened the way they did. We do know that in general, for the most part, Native people are very loving and accepting of our Two-Spirit community. And we have a relationship with that identity and all of our identities for hundreds and thousands of years. It was only till Christianity showed up that it became a taboo. So I think we're not too far removed from that world. Now, some of the older generation, especially the baby boomer generation, grew up with the first generation of boarding school era in a way that really, they're still traumatized and still working through a lot of that. So I think, it's also just a change in perspectives of the people involved. I don't know that no one in that category or no one in that situation went forward thinking that they were trying to be discriminatory. It just kind of happened to be something that they hadn't thought about until it was presented to them. I mean, Sean and Adrian are literally the first Two-Spirit couple in the country to do this. So it was revolutionary on their part to want to step forward and be those guinea pigs and see, what our culture thought of it. So that's kind of how that happened. I see a lot of questions in the chat. How would you like me to proceed? Do you want me to just answer those, Laura?
However you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I see that the first question is, where did the first powwow take place? First powwow took place at San Manuel powwow. And again, it said, was it a change of sentiment or change of location that allowed them to dance the sweetheart dance? Well, the first powwow in the film is actually Gathering of Nations in Albuquerque. So we had used that as part of our storytelling creativity to share the fireside story of what happened to them originally. The second powwow was back to the San Manuel actual powwow. So that's kind of how that happened. But I like, again, to reiterate what I said earlier, Native culture is not inherently racist or prejudice or excluding our LGBTQ communities. It's just some questions are more complicated than others, and some questions have never been asked. So I think that's how that worked out. And then Susie asks, why Sweethearts for a title? What does it signify for my tribe? So in the film, when they were talking about why Sean and Adrian are such a strong couple, they say, my parents had, we were together, my parents were together and had many kids by the time they were my age. So we're a product of sweethearts. And so, I mean, this is a couple that loved each other very deeply, that, they're committed to spending their entire lives together. They're in love. They love what they do as artists. And I think it's a great example of what should be put out there for other kids and everyone in the world to see that, Native American culture is just like anyone else. We want to be seen in that same way. So, I just think they're a product of sweethearts. How incredible is that? Like the stigma around, all these different issues is really, it's demonized, like the way that the world wants to look at our Two-Spirit people is not the same that we think they represent themselves in a better way. And Sean and Adrian are an example of just a really beautiful, creative, artistic couple. And that's why we named it Sweetheart Dancers, because they're in love and they just want to dance for the people. That's it. Other question. Do you know if same-gendered relationships can wear outfits that jingle? They do have, so jingle dress dancers are traditionally, a female dance, gendered female. And people do now dance what's called switch. And so switch style dancers can wear, the other outfits. It's not seen as that crazy, it's just different styles of dances were made for different people. You also have to remember, in the history of like American Indian dance, a lot of these dances didn't exist 200 years ago. Like, this is all modern culture. Powwow culture is modern culture. It's not, it's rooted in the history and tradition of our people from thousands of years. But it's all contemporary pop culture. So these dances evolve and change and become new things, and the materials that we create our regalia from are different. So it's just kind of an evolution of pop culture.
Looks like Richard has a question. Richard, would you like to unmute?
Thanks. Hi. Yeah, thanks. It was a really beautiful film. So in the gay culture, Two-Spirit people are often exemplified as what it really means to be gay, that it's accepted, that American Indian culture has always accepted it. So saying that, and then seeing that the powwow, they weren't accepted, and you said it was the first time, that seems a little bit unusual to me, because two-spirited people have gone historically a long time, been noted in the tribes. So that statement, I'm just trying to figure it out in my head. wonderful that they were recognized, but when you said it was the first time, I don't think it's accurate to say that. With all due respect, there have been other two-spirited couples. So help me understand that.
Are you referring to my statement that they're the first two-spirit couple to dance the sweetheart dance together?
Well, when you said that there was no prejudice against a same-gender couple, but it seemed like there was, and that's what I'm trying to.
In general, traditional people do not look at two-spirit couples in any different way. In general, but you have to understand there's over 580 tribes. Out of those tribes, some are urban, some are rural, country towns, some have been colonized more than others. So for example, in California, there's a lot of mission bands. Mission bands are derivatives of Catholic missionary schools. So when you look at certain places, there's a little bit different mentality. If you go down to the South, or if you go to like North Carolina, the Lumbees are hardcore Christians. There a lot of them are, not all, but you see big pockets of conservative Christians. If you go to some of the tribes, you see multimillionaire, rich Republican natives. So I don't think that, when you look at the broad spectrum of Native people on Turtle Island, which is North American, there are many different ways that we present. And so are they the first two-spirit couple that's danced on the dance floor? No, of course not. Are they made a particular choice to step in front of a large arena in a competition and essentially have them had to make the decision that if they were rejected from this dance, that they would go back and return and do their best to make it acceptable. So they were paving the way for other young couples who might want to make this lifestyle of competition dancing their thing. But, you can't say Native people aren't prejudiced. There's racist Native people. There's political Native people. There's prejudice everywhere. So like, I can't speak for all of these Indians. I can't speak for all these tribes. In fact, that's one of the reasons why being Indigenous is a complicated affair, because I can sit here and tell you my perspective, but I couldn't really tell you, how, say, a tribe in the Pacific Northwest, does everything religiously, culturally, and financially. It's just, we are a small microcosm of America, which represents less than 5 million people in a country full of over 330 million, right? So we're a small minority. And so this is an experience about one particular incident with one group of people. But I don't think that it's a widespread bias or people, it isn't common, right? It's just kind of, we're a very liberal culture.
All right, thank you. How did you come to make this particular film? How did you get in contact with Sean and Adrian? How did that come to be?
Well, I was at Sundance with another project that I had, and I met a man named Siloam Gray Mountain, and he's a hip hop photographer from the Ute tribe. And he said he had a cousin who had an incident where, I should take a look at the story and see if it was something that could be made into a film. So I met with Sean and Adrian, and we talked, and I learned more about what they were trying to achieve with not just the story of what had happened to them, but what they were hoping to do in the near future for activism and messaging. And I felt like they had a really great opportunity to use this story as an example of resilience and tenacity in the face of this, misunderstandings and just wanting to not let situations control them, but to really, make change. And I'm always an advocate for young leaders who want to put their voices on the front line and use their stories to kind of make change. So I agreed to do the story. We were able to accomplish it through Concordia. And then it went on a festival run that was really remarkable for the film. It won the grand jury at Outfest a few years ago. it's probably, I don't know if it's the only Native film that's won Outfest, but there are very few films from Indian country that get that far, and just continues to impact people, because I think the story is universal. It's about, struggling for acceptance, having strength and love in the face of adversity, and ultimately, not letting anyone get the best of you. And I think those are universal themes that will continue to be valuable to us. There's a lot of words. I'm talking a lot now, everyone. Thank you.
A lot of good words. Anyone else have questions? You can put them in the chat or unmute yourself.
Hello, I had a quick question, but I was not on the chat because I'm on a phone call.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know where I could find this video. Since I was on a phone call, I wasn't able to see it, but I heard a little bit of it.
Yeah, it's available through Documentary Educational Resources, der.org. So I think they have it on Vimeo and everything. It has done some runs. It was on PBS for a little bit, and so yeah, for now it's available exclusively through DER. But possibly, if this is for school, maybe Laura can share and share it again for those of you who aren't able to see it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think I've got sort of the ability to share it for a period of time, so maybe that'll help some of the folks who weren't able to see it.
I see that Laura asked about how to get this to a wider audience, Netflix, Hulu, etc. I love DER. We worked together for a while now, and they've done a great job of helping us with this film. We do continue to entertain options, and with streamers, larger streamers are very interested in it. We just need to be able to work it out in a way that it makes sense for our educational distributor, who I'm loyal to, and wanting to make sure that we fulfill our contract with them. But I do see this film expanding and moving beyond our contract into a larger streamer. It is on the table. It just might take some time.
So I have another question. Was there anything that you took out of the film that was a hard choice, something that you wanted to include, but editorial, in your editorial approach, you decided to pull it out?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of really great stuff, and beautiful scene, a lot of shots of dancing I loved. I mean, I ultimately went into it just wanting to create a visual piece of how incredible our powwows can be. Like, I wanted to share some of the energy that we feel, like contextualize the drum, the sounds, the colors. Like, so I had to pull back on that, and it was really difficult because I know it made it like a really cool artistic vibe. But if it was up to me and I didn't have a good editor, I'd probably just been like 20 minutes of people dancing. I don't know. I mean, I can't give myself too much credit. Derek Donine, who edited the film for us, is an incredible editor and director as well. So so we worked together, and he showed me some nuances, but ultimately, like, I always want to see more. Like, I wish this was a feature. This could be really incredible. But we made the film in the right amount of time so we made the film, and that was about as much footage as we had to tell the story. And that was it. I mean, if it would have been 30 minutes or 60 minutes, that would have been cool too. But I think we just had enough material for 14 minutes.
I'd like 6 episodes on Netflix, please. Maybe several seasons.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack. It's really true. Native America is a mystery, and it's still, held up as this beacon of light with climate change and land acknowledgements, and half the states of being named after Indigenous people, and the mascot issues, pipelines. I mean, we're constantly in the news and really misunderstood as humans. Like we're always branded as political warriors and social justice, kind of advocates, which is true. It is true. We do live really in sync with our belief systems because they're so far from what the average, American, champions. So yeah, we do have a lot of issues, and we're kind of a mystery. There's just not a lot of us out here. So hopefully films like this can continue to help, make this connection with our culture and so that you have more to talk about when you meet other Indigenous people than just the teepees, fry bread, and what kind of moccasins you wear. Those are all stereotypical aspects of our culture. And, but it's yeah, I would like more.
For those folks who may not have ever attended a powwow, can you talk a little bit about the powwow culture and the circuit and the importance of dance? You talked a little bit about how it's a modern thing. Can you, kind of give us a little more context about that?
Modern thing. Yeah, I mean, I think in the 50s, I think it was primarily, could have been earlier, 40s and 50s, 30s, there was always dancing. Like tribal people would gather and celebrate and usually celebrate with barbecues and eat and gather. And for hundreds of years, that's how tribal people found their relationships, because they would go from, so it would be the springtime and they'd want to have a horse race and some games and have a dance, and everyone would come to a certain location on a river. This, I'm just using generally a story of how this might go down. And that's where people met their future husbands or wives or partners, and traded for horses and traded fish for buffalo or berries, for rifles. It was just a very bartering society as early as like 150 years ago. So powwows are kind of a everlasting symbol of that relationship that we have for pan-Indianism or multi-tribalism. So they primarily happen a lot of times in the summer. I mean, the summer is a big powwow season, and every tribe or every powwow committee can decide to host a powwow, and they gather some money up and they decide what categories they might want to have as a contest, or some don't have any contests. And yeah, people come from all around and they camp or they rent hotels and they dance and sing. And it's just a gathering, a social gathering where Native people can get together on our own terms and talk about the old days, and find new ways of being, future ancestors,
Great, thank you. Other questions?
A lot of smiling faces and no questions.
Well, I have 150 questions, so I could keep going. Just and if no one else has one, could you talk a little bit more about two-spirit identity and how that is seen as different or similar to other terms that we might use to identify gender and sexuality, like gay or transgender? Where does two-spirit fit in?
I mean, and we start to tiptoe into an area where I'll be very clear that I can't speak for anyone else's definition of that term. From what I've been able to hear Sean and Adrian explain, it's almost it's a spiritual path. It's a way that their access to a different realm, and their parallels with us. And in Native culture, as you go through time, everyone has their role, everyone has their place and what they do and what they can contribute. And so historically, and not so much with the term two-spirit, but historically our relationship to two-spirit identities was they were medicine people, they were aunties and uncles, they were warriors, they were leaders, and they were part of a very vibrant part of our identity and our communities. They were enemy number one when Christianity came to the plains and the plateaus. They were just like a lot of the other leadership, targeted and chastised and pushed to the back because it was a land grab, and it was a murderous occasion to people were killing Indians. The government was killing Indians. They were killing the buffalo. They were destroying things. It was a pretty chaotic time. And so in all of that, the identity of our two-spirit Native people were pushed underground. And, it was beat into our kids in boarding schools that, being gay or any derivative or any gender identity or whatever, other than what you were born with, was an abomination to God. And that happened. My mom experienced that. I mean, just being in school, that was what she was told. And so, this is something that, despite all of the civil rights era and everything that happened, this was happening in schools in all of our states where there were Native communities up until the 70s and 80s. In fact, I had heard about it in the 90s. Some of my cousins who went to school. So it's been a long war against the LGBTQ community, especially in Indian country. And that's where this comes from as well, as a little bit of my own pushback to this sordid history, and what we're allowed to be. So yeah, that's kind of, I couldn't say, I know that two-spirit identity is something that Native people identify as only. That is not something that is something that could be a representative of someone who isn't Native. That's as much as I know.
Thank you. So what are you working on now, or what is your next project? What can we look out for?
Yes, thank you. Well, I have a few. Well, I can't announce that yet. What else? What can I announce? Let's see. I do have a film that I'm doing about a crazy horse race called the world famous suicide race. It's in Washington State. It was a race kind of established in the Wild West Cody Bill days, when people were really into kind of curiosity events. And now it's like a wild Indian horse race where people train their whole life to kind of drop off the side of a dusty cliff, and not a real cliff. It's just a steep embankment and into the river. And it's controversial because a lot of animal rights activists think that it's an abusive race. To the people who run the race for the past 100 years, it's the foundation of their culture, their religion, their family, and the horses that they raise are they're sacred. What's Shinko Wakan? They're sacred, horses. They're sacred dogs. So I think that it's a culture clash, and I'm really interested in subjects that are culture clashes, because I feel like, as much as we tip our hat to Native people for being environmentalists and animal rights activists ourselves, there are these flashpoints where we have traditionally, you have people who would be friends, squaring off. And this is a situation where I think that story goes is you have a lot of good people who do like Native American culture who are looking at this race and wondering if we're actually inhumane, so I'm going to debunk some of those myths with this film, and help to shine some light on what competition sports and working with animals might look like from the Native perspective. And it's in fact pretty incredible how well the horses are treated and how close they are to the family, and how much of spiritual thought goes into the race, as opposed to just looking at like a sensational, abusive kind of rodeo clown business, So that's something we're going to finish up this year, and it'll be on the festival circuit by fall, I hope. And aside from that, just look for some big streamer projects for me.
Wonderful. All right. Any last questions? Well, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ben-Alex, for sharing this time with us and for sharing your beautiful film.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking a look at it. And yeah, if you have any questions about the film and you want to learn more, like I said, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer some of the deeper questions, but I'm on Instagram as Ben-Indigenous, and Sean and Adrian are on Instagram as Sweetheart Dancers 2019. And we're always on our socials and happy to chat and continue to share more that we know, and just thank you for watching and look for more Indigenous films and cinema. Check out Rutherford Falls, my friend Sierra's TV show on Peacock. There's another one coming out called Reservation Dogs, which is Taika Waititi and Sterling Harjo's series on FX. So there's a lot of really new, innovative Native American stuff on the horizon, and I hope that that people take some interest in it, because we'd like to share more about our culture in the future. See, Susie's asking if I have an email. It's just bendigenous@gmail.com. Very simple. I'm easy to find in the world. You can probably find me any given place. But thank you so much for watching, and I appreciate all your time. I know you have you could watch a lot of films, so thanks for watching mine.
All right, thank you so much. All right, have a great day, everyone.
Later.